Everybody! They are an award-winning holidays theatrical actor. Currently, within the last year, they've been in some of the most amazing nerdy properties of all time. They were Park Red in Cowboy Bebop, Desire in The Sandman, and currently Ian on Quantum Leap. Please welcome to the stage, Mason Alexander Carr! I knew it was the entrance room, and then they're like, oh, Mason looks great today as well. So thank you. Thank you for being here at Dallas Fan Festival.
Thank you for having me.
First off, congratulations on the success of The Sandman. It was one of the top to watch Netflix shows of the year. I know we were fingers crossed for a second season, but that's out of our hands right now. But I would love to just kick things off. You were at San Diego Comic-Con, I know, earlier, promoting the show. Now that the show's ended, is this your first convention sort of greeting fans, or have you done one before?
Tom and I did New York Comic-Con.
Oh, excellent.
That was like a week ago.
Yeah,
so that would have been our first, so this is only our second.
Very cool. Talk a little bit about the fan experience now that the show's ended. You know, having fans come up to you and what do they say? Like, how's that felt?
It's been really nice. I have yet to have a situation that I didn't enjoy, so that's good. Usually people are very cool. I feel like we're very lucky that the show means so much to the individual that usually watches it. There is a demographic of people, I think, that like kind of just fall into the Sandman or see it, but a good chunk of the like intense fandom are people that grew up with the books, and so there's sort of this like weird emotional responsibility in terms of doing, I think, a show like this or dealing with a property like this, because everybody that comes up to you is like, I've been hearing this voice, or I've been seeing these images, since I was a teenager, or and that's like a really incredible thing to be able to be a part of. So everybody that comes up and says very nice things is always welcome.
Yeah, that's amazing. You mentioned sort of the casting, being cast in the role, and how it was a long process for Neil, right, in terms of developing the show, and then finally got there, and casting was such a huge thing, because like you said, fans have that image in their mind, or in this case, literally an image on a page. But Neil did some amazing things. It's a super diverse cast. I mean, he wrote it 30 years ago, so he did some new things. What was the response like when you saw yourself cast, but then you also saw that amazing cast built around you?
I was really excited because the way that Sandman, especially season 1, functioned, you didn't really meet anybody. Like, we didn't know anybody that was in the show. Like there's such self-contained experiences that like I acted opposite Tom and Donna, and so I had heard certain other actors that were a part of it. Like I knew that Gwendolyn was Lucifer. I knew that John Cameron Mitchell was Hal because he texted me pictures of him as Hal. It was kind of, we all pieced those things together.
For sure.
And then that big announcement came out that like had a huge chunk of us in it with like Pat Oswalt and all these people that I don't think I had heard yet or realized. And that was really cool because you're just like, a lot of the choices were unbelievably in line with what was already on the page in terms of like Stephen Fry as Gilbert. It could not be a more like page to screen direct translation. And then we had other characters that like were wonderfully reinvented in a way that I think greatly honored the source material, but allowed it to breathe and grow as Neil's grown, because he's not the exact same person who wrote Sandman all those years ago. And so he has more access and more opportunity and more power than he did in many ways then, to be able to like embed his stories with a even more modern experience of the world. So I think that the Sandman that everybody was interested in building was one that would hold up 30 years from now in the same way that the comics hold up 30 years from now. And so I think if it continues to improve on itself, 50 years from now, someone will hopefully be able to watch the show and still see a representation of the world within it, and see people of color and see queer people that often are left outside of those kinds of stories.
Yeah, that's amazing. What an answer, huh? Wow. Yeah. Really enjoyed the show. You love the talk a little bit about, were you a Neil Gaiman fan prior to this in terms of books and comics? And I heard a rumor, not a rumor per se, you've said it before, that you really pursued this role of Desire. Like you were a fan already, is that true?
Yeah, I loved, I think Coraline was the thing that introduced me to Neil.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, hearing that Coraline. And it was, you know, so I was a spooky kid, so that really spoke to me. It's such a cool concept. And so, you know, American Gods and all these other properties sort of became a part of my knowledge of Neil. And I had a friend who worked on the final season of American Gods who auditioned for the Sandman, and that's what put it in my mind as even a thing that was being made. And then Neil, as we all know, is very active on Twitter, so he had been, you know, tweeting about the process of getting the show made, and I saw an update. They had finally started shooting in the middle of the pandemic, and I was in quarantine in New Zealand for Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, wow.
And so I had nothing to do for 2 weeks.
Bebop!
I had nothing going on, so I kind of drove myself a little bit crazy, and it was like 4 in the morning when I saw this tweet, and I was like, I wonder if Desire is going to be in season 1, or if they're going to divvy it up in a way that, because Desire doesn't come in until the 10th issue, I didn't know how they were stretching the show. So instead of waiting around for my agents to maybe get me an appointment or something for it, I was kind of I'm just going to ask. Because he's always answering questions. And I'm not going to ask as an actor, I'm just going to ask as a fan. So I was like, is Desire going to be making an appearance in season 1? And if so, have you cast that role yet? And so then he sent me back the casting director's information. Quietly checked out a bunch of YouTube videos with me, and then told Alan that he wanted me to play Desire, which I had no idea. So I still properly did an audition. My agent still got me an appointment, even though I heard it apparently it was me.
I'm happy for it. So sweet, Neil Gaiman. Woo, that feels good.
Yeah.
You mentioned Cowboy Bebop, first Netflix show. Yeah, come on, Bebop. Another piece that, again, folks were not scared to translate, but it was like, can we do this? You know what I mean? Can we show the visual? And along with the Sandman, I think a lot of fans would agree, I thought the visuals and the way they visually captured what the original anime looked like, you know what I mean, was one of the best parts of that show. Talk about, I know we're all mad because of his cancellation. Don't talk about that, but talk about being a part of that season, that first season.
I mean, what a remarkable group of people. John Cho,
oh my gosh,
phenomenal as Spike Lee, and the whole show as itself was made with so much love and joy and reverence for the source material. But you know, when you're adapting something from different mediums, it's impossible to keep exactly what it is, which is the fun of it. That's the challenge of it. That's what allows you to do new things with it, do different things with it. Because no matter what we do with Cowboy Bebop, no matter what we did with the Sandman television show, it doesn't shift the source material. No amount of TV show in the world will ever make the book no longer exist. No amount of, I'm always very confused by people who are afraid of having more, of the thing that they love, because even if you don't love that version of it, I, for instance, am a massive fan of Star Wars. There's now so much Star Wars out there. I can't watch all of the Star Wars that's out there, but I watched quite a few of the new things, and I'm I love some of the stuff they do, and then some things I'm oh yeah, I don't need to, necessarily watch all of that or whatever. There's too much time, there's too much content and so much stuff out there. So don't force feed yourself, or be upset if somebody is revisiting a really fun thing that you may have loved at one time or another. Because even if you don't like it, then we still have the original to go back and watch, which I have since done with all of my favorite things, and that's kind of part of the fun of it.
For sure. Give it a chance before you just judge it based off of a BuzzFeed article you read or something about the casting. Yeah.
The corgi is not a corgi. That was one of the funniest things I think, or one of the saddest things that I think happened during the process of that show was the
social media.
the strange the gaslighting, like the lying in social, in order to get people not, it's like the same people who review bombed Bros, that film that just came out and did a similar thing with Sandman and stuff. Like there is a demographic of people that are very upset at inclusion and very upset at, you know, the diversity that's sort of making its way into, very properly into, you know, popular franchises and things. And yeah, there was Bebop had a different version of that, where people were like, would claim that like that Ein wasn't going to be a corgi, that Ein was going to be a lab, and there were like literally articles written about this, and just like and retweeted like hundreds of thousands of times. And that's how, you know, that's how they do that kind of stuff. It's offensive.
Was there anything with the Salmon in particular that stood out to you? Is a similar type thing?
Oh, of course, yeah. A lot of people prejudged, you know, the casting of the Sandman because it included a lot of people of color and included non-binary individuals. Like there, you know, it was, which is shocking because it really, the source material is very much so what ended up on screen.
Yeah, for sure.
Beyond just plot, like characterization too, and the only difference for certain characters was like the shade of their skin. And so the fixating on race in a negative way to me has always been crazy, because you're like, it's still a show about like a white guy. Like your lead, like the Sandman is still like this British pasty white guy. Who's here in the building?
He's gonna hear that. Someone's gonna get up during his panel. Someone has to get up during his panel after this.
I'm gonna come and I'm gonna like razz him from the back.
Yeah.
But I have to say that he's my brother. You know, beautiful, tall, whitey, and we love him for it. And like, you know, and it's funny because we still have that experience. It's not like there is an erasure of anything. So I'm always confused as people are like, well, that person should be this. I'm like, well, the world is still yours. Like, you're fine. Like, let Kirby be remarkable as death, because like she was, and anyone who had an issue with that, like, very quickly realized that and kind of shut up about it, which was amazing. And Neil talks about it all the time. He's like, yeah, all of the people who had a problem with Sandman kind of disappeared after they saw the show, because they were like, fuck, it's good. Those characters, like, that's right, that makes sense. They are very much so the person they're playing.
Yeah. You said it already. It's about the essence of the character, the personality of the character, not the color of their skin or their gender. You know what I mean? The series does that beautifully. I think Neil intended that for many of the characters. You know what I mean? It was just a different time period. I want to read this. This is a description of the character of Desire, because it's spot on. They are a strikingly beautiful, androgynous figure of gender fluidity.
Yes.
They can be male, female, both, or neither, as the situation warrants. Desire's smiles are brief and sharp. Their skin is pale as smoke. Their hair midnight black, and their eyes are tawny and sharp as yellow wine. Desire casts two shadows, one black and one sharp, the other translucent and wavering. And didn't Mason crush that whole thing right there? Yeah. I mean, how important was it for you to bring that character to life, especially in the amazing, gender fluid way that was portrayed? Yeah.
Well, you know, as a reader, I felt a responsibility to deliver my inner child the experience that I first read. And so that's kind of how I approached this, which, I don't know if that necessarily helped or not, but it helped me in the end of the day. I kind of was like, I'm gonna do this one for me. This is a part that I felt like I fit in terms of, the aesthetic of the description or what I imagined. Whether that's what somebody else imagines is a completely different thing. But because, I had a kinship with Desire and was like, oh, okay, I think I can do that. I did the thing that I first experienced. And so when I read the books and the feeling that those panels gave me, the feeling that the scenes between Dream and Desire and Despair kind of had in those first few issues, that was the thing I was most fixated on, like recapturing for myself. And I think that was my North Star. That sort of helped me a lot. You know, I looked enough like the character on the page, minus like I was blonde at the time, or my dark hair has been, you know, hiding. But I was the only thing that I was like, oh yeah, that's not exact this picture. You know, we have a very similar smile, similar face, and so yeah, that helped a lot. You know, I felt close enough to the part to begin with, and then I just played.
It's awesome you say that word, 'cause I think that's what was the best part of the series, was the play. You know what I mean, with it, and seeing all those, you know, flat 2D pictures become playful on screen, and all the colors and the costumes and the characterizations was so cool. I want to bring up something very quickly, and then we'll go to our audience. So again, if you have a question for Mason, just hop on up to the mic. I'm a huge theater fan as well. And you got to play 3 of like the most iconic androgynous gender fluid characters in theater at the very, you know, distinct theaters. Hedwig, obviously, Dr. Frankenfurter from and my gosh, the most iconic, the MC from Cabaret. How do you even go anywhere in theater from that? Those are 3 of the most iconic roles. What I guess particularly stood out to you? And my gosh, back to back, like that had to be a dream.
Yeah, I mean, well, those were the 3 roles that made me study theater.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't a lot of representation. There still isn't a lot of representation in theater for explicitly trans or explicitly, you know, genderqueer or gender non-binary or gender non-conforming individuals. So I didn't grow up with my cats that you know, it's like that's the trans cat.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure someone out there knows which one the trans cat is. They're there. But you know, there was no Hedwig is like the trans Mama Rose.
Yeah.
There are same with the MC, same with Frankenfurter. Like there are very these ambiguous kind of, you can cast it a million different ways.
For sure.
So, and they're remarkably challenging as an actor, as any actor, no matter whether you're male, female, non-binary. I feel like all 3 of those roles have a lot of meat for any actor. And I had a list. I was like, all right, these are the 3 that I'm going to do in my lifetime. I'll be happy. I'll be done. I'll retire. And then my first job. So Hedwig was kind of the thing that made me study theater in school, and then my first job out of school was doing the Broadway national tour of that show for a year or so. I started with Dinner Chris, and then I went off and did it for a very long time. And it was remarkable. It's it's the greatest role in musical theater in my opinion for an actor. And then the other 2 just kind of came, and I'm revisiting one of the 3 in a big fun way at some time.
Oh, nice.
So,
All right.
That's all I can say.
Let's throw up a poll.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I can't wait to hear more about that. All right, we have a lot of fans lined up, so let's get to it. Want to start over here?
Hi, man. So my name's McCall. I saw you first at Cowboy Bebop, loved it. You blew my mind, though, as Desire and Sandman. Absolutely blew my mind. 2 words come to mind describing Desire as I saw the film on screen: deliciously evil. But I wanted to ask, you spoke a little bit about it. How did you dig into yourself for that character? Were you using, some parts of yourself to kind of amplify that to play Desire?
Yeah. I think most performances or the decent performances are usually when you start from a place of your own, tactile understanding. As long as you have some sort of experiences that you can pull upon, then the chances are that it'll read as honest and read as true. And I feel like Desire is that was an easy character to screw up because they are so fluid and so changing, both in emotionality but also physically, when it comes to gender, when it comes to presentation and stuff. And obviously we didn't necessarily physicalize that in the show, but I kind of had to physicalize that in my body in a way that I communicated very differently to Despair than I would with Dream, and there's different kinds of care and fluidity and movement to both of those versions of Desire. But I think the thing that I probably drew on the most was just my the characters that I fell in love with as a kid that were deliciously evil, and you know, none of them are the villain of their own story. Like they're all the hero. Ursula is the hero of her story, right? Frankenfurter is the hero of his story. And so there's a bit of like Rocky Horror in there, you know, like I would think about, like when I played it, Frank has this line where he says, he's talking to Brad, and he goes, oh, Brad. How close were you? And so like every time I heard that, I heard that was kind of where I started with Desire. It's like, okay, let's do a less intense version of that. And that turned into like poetry, like all of that kind of stuff. So for me, it was more about like bringing things that inspired me as a kid, that like performances and people that I understood that were similar and kind of, you know, fun to dig into. And then, yeah, just in terms of like the evil thing, like Desire is so good in my heart. Like I was fortunate enough to have access to Neil and Alan as creatives, and they gave me nothing but incredible things to work off of, like to make Desire heroic in my mind. And so that definitely helps balance it out, because then it lays in truth that I'm not just like some asshole in a catsuit that's doing stuff for no reason. Like I'm still an asshole in a catsuit, but like there is something behind it, you know, that feels a little more. So thank you. I hope. Yeah.
No, and I look forward to seeing you in other properties. I am very glad to see you here. Thank you for appearing.
Thank you very much.